Hi, welcome to Sara's Texture Crafts. I am Sarah. I thought it might be quite nice to give you a bit of background to me, to my business, and give you a bit of a run through of the types of products that you will find at sarastexturecrafts.com. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. What is Sara's Texture Crafts and where can you find me? Well, my website is www.sarastexturecrafts.com. I am an indie fibre artist and supplier, so if you come to me looking for anything from wools direct off of the sheep's back right through to finished yarn and equipment for your crafting, then I have a good range of everything. Some of what I do is commercially prepared. I buy into brands as well. I also work with local farmers to bring their products direct to you, and there is a high percentage of product that I hand make myself or have a part in the hand processing of said product. So I will give you a little bit of history and how I got started. So I started off, well, as many people did, as a young girl, heavy into my arts and crafts. I have my family to thank for that, primarily my mum, who was instrumental in my learning how to knit, how to sew, how to do a lot of textile crafts. And from that I really developed a really strong passion for crafting very early on, and very quickly decided that I wanted to become a fashion designer. I went on to university. I studied at the London College of Fashion and I studied for a product development degree. That was a 4-year course, and within that 3 years were college timetables and 1 year was out in the industry, where I discovered that obviously there was a lot more than the 11-year-old me had surmised there would be in the fashion industry. So it was a lot more involved and a much bigger business than I had kind of originally anticipated. But that's great, you know, because that's exactly what you do these work placements for, is to learn about the business behind that passionate sort of design and creativity that goes on within the fashion industry. And I loved every minute of it. When I graduated, I got a job straight away, and I started working for British fashion designers. I worked my way up from production and design room assistant right through to senior designer on a diffusion line for one of the British fashion designers that I worked for. From there on out, it was senior designer and freelance positions that I held. Within all of those jobs, but mostly within the freelancing area, I developed this sort of real passion for how fabrics were put together. The fibres that were picked, you know, why would I pick a viscose elastane over a bamboo for t-shirt fabric? You know, why would I prefer to use 100% wool rather than 100% acrylic when it became, when we were talking about knitwear? So all of those things kind of really gave me a huge passion for learning and trying to understand how different fabrics were constructed, how they were made, and the benefits of each of those. And that kind of launched me into a small foray into textile design, which I did as part of my freelance work. I think, I don't know if any of you know, but when you're freelancing, and I should imagine this works the same for any industry that you're in, you're usually very well paid. It's almost like a consultancy job, if you like. You come in and you are contracted for X amount of time or X amount of days per week, and you're paid set amounts, and they pay you generally at a higher rate than their full-time staff, purely because they just want you for a very short contract, and because obviously they're hiring your expertise on a particular project. So that kind of left me with so many days a week where apart from doing said research for next projects and things like that, I really kind of had a lot of downtime. And being the workaholic that I am, which any of you know me will be laughing at and nodding their head, yes, I am, I kind of needed something else on the go. So I decided to dive into the textile industry. I didn't really know where I was going to sort of pit myself at the beginning, but I went in and I did a bit of this and a bit of that, and very quickly I started out on eBay, and I started buying bankrupt stock from haberdasheries that had closed down. They would sell their stock in bulk. I would buy that, split it up and sell it on, and that really became my thing for a while. I wouldn't say it was hugely rewarding, but it did fulfil that kind of workaholic nature. It really took off, and I was quite surprised actually at how much it had taken off in such a short amount of time. And for me, one of those things, certainly while I was working freelance as a fashion and textile designer, I was continuously getting questions about, where can I buy the best needles, where can I get this fabric, where can I get that. So it kind of made sense that as I was trawling through these haberdashery bankrupt stocks, that I would try and look for things that would fit those questions that I was getting, so that it would help me to sell on, and I could use my expertise in the textile industry to be able to sell the right thing to the right person. So as I say, that took off, and I remember coming across a felt making kit that I had in my craft stash, and it was a kit that my mum and I had bought several years before, and it had gone unused, and it was just one of those little sample kits just to give you just enough of a taster of what felt making was. And of course, never having done it before, I thought, I wonder if this might be of interest, and there might be a market for this kind of thing. So I had a play and fell in love, and then I started buying fibre to create more, and doing things, not just wet felting but needle felting, and also turning my hand to embellishing. I found a few suppliers who agreed to supply me with the right type of product, and so Sara's Texture Crafts took a very woolly turn, if you like, and I started supplying fellow felt makers, and that was before I discovered spinning wheels and spindles and weaving looms and that kind of thing. So I was very much a felt maker, and very much thought like a felt maker when I was injecting product into my online eBay shop. I got to the point, I think probably in 2007, end of 2007, beginning of 2008, where I felt that I really needed to really make a jump and expand into what I was doing and make a capital investment. At that time I was doing so well as Sara's Texture Crafts that actually it was rivaling my schedule of freelance work, which at that time unfortunately was petering out, purely because the recession, or the beginning of the recession, was starting to hit. And fashion, being as fashion is, it's one of the first areas that really gets hit when a recession comes around. So freelance work was kind of drying up, and I just had this real passion for what I was doing and working with wool fibres, and I really wanted to give Sara's Texture Crafts a good go before I started to look for any other full-time fashion work. And I think it's a blessing that I did, really, because as I say, I got to that point where I sort of discovered and felt there was a real need for a bigger capital investment within my business. And it happened actually literally a couple of days apart, but I had one of who I would consider one of the top competitors of that time on eBay within that sector contact me and say they were going to close the business because They were looking at doing other things, and would I like to consider buying a business? The next day I'd also heard that one of those other large competitors was leaving the country. And I kind of said to myself and to my partner, well, this is all a bit silly, you know, this is a sign, you know, I'm wanting to invest and there's now going to be a space within this industry, and so I should really take as much advantage of it as possible. And that's what I did. I popped along to the bank agreed to give me a loan, and I bought that business. I rebranded it under the Sara's Textograph umbrella, if you like, and continued on with my own eBay store. I took that opportunity at the same time to expand into starting to create a lot more handmade product as well, and starting to sell on Etsy. I also sold a little bit on Amazon, and also starting to think about working on my own website, on my own e-commerce website. And since then I kind of haven't looked back. As I say, I work with a lot of local farmers, which is absolutely tremendous. Going to see the sheep and working with those farmers on the fibre for the next year's shear is a fantastic opportunity to really get down to the roots, as it were, and see that product right through to the end and to the customer's hands is fantastic. And I'm also lucky enough that I'm supported by some big name brands as well within the industry. So I supply Ashford product, so anything from their spinning reels right through to their looms, some of their fibres and so on. And I also work with knitting companies now like KnitPro and Xiaogu to bring you needles and various accessories and sundries for your knitting. So there's a lot that I cover, there's a broad spectrum of product that I cover, but I guess what you really want to know about is my handmade product. Okay, so probably the three main areas of handmade product that I currently produce are my hand-dyed tops. If I show you that all coiled up, you'll get an idea of colours. That's colour lichen. And you can see it goes from a lovely olive, a brown, and a sort of grey-black. This is probably my most common dye technique. I use a dye technique called Kettle Dying. If you're not sure what that is, well, essentially I put all of my fibre or yarn into my dye pot. The dye pot already has a water and vinegar solution in there for setting and helping saturation of the dye throughout the fibre. And then onto that I squeeze a little pot of dye solution onto the areas of the fibre or the yarn that I want the colour to uptake and become saturated with. That for me is a nice and easy way of being able to work. It means that I can dye in bulk probably as much as 5-6 kilos a week. I also do what I call semi-solid colours, which are just singular colours. They're dyed again in a kettle dye way, so although it's one shade, across that length you'll get areas of saturation and areas of pale saturation as well, so it will give you, you know, a completely different look to a commercially made dyed colour. So just gives you an idea of how those kind of variegated dyes would take on a yarn. And if I just show you this finished piece, you can see that this colour will sort of net up a bit like this, which is kind of cute, I think, for kids. So there are lots of different things, lots of different colourways that you can get within in the fibres. I dye many different breeds and also blends as well, so I might mix a bit of merino with silk, a bit of blue face Leicester with a bit of sparkle, and so on and so forth, just because spinners and felt makers might want different effects and looks as they work, and also particularly for spinners, the addition of things like nylon makes a product more accessible for certain finished items like socks and so on. The other thing that I do quite a lot of is bats. I also do rolags as well, which is a stage on from bat making. This is just processing the fibres in a different way. So I use an Ashford drum carder, and what I do is I lay out the fibres in colours and textures that are pleasing. Again, these are great for felt makers and spinners. Of course, weavers and knitters can use all of these products once they've become yarn. So that's something else I do, and as I mentioned earlier, I also work with fleece. So I dye lots of fleece in kettle dyed variation colours, plain colours as well, and mix and match those within the products you've seen, and also sell them, you know, as they are, as curls and lock lengths and so on, which are great for art yarns, freeform weaving, felt making and so on. So what is an average day for me at Sara's Texture Crafts? Well, I can say weeks will vary, but I guess generally week to week, my week is probably set up in the following ways. Monday is all about shipping orders from the weekend and generally catching up on admin and things from the weekend and preparing for the week ahead. Tuesdays, and I'm looking up there because I have a little timetable for myself, because it's really important to be organised, and if you run your own business you'll know exactly what I mean. Organisation is key, because when you've got one pair of hands you need to be on the ball at all times. So Tuesday is usually a production day, so I'm either dyeing or I'm carding or I'm producing new products to go onto the website. Wednesdays have become a bit of a blog day for me. My blog is at craftsoftexture.com, and over there you can find lots of woolly lifestyle blog posts. So I chat about what's happening here behind the scenes. I also talk about things that I've heard about within the industry. I talk a little bit about craft business and give advice to you know, newbie craft businesses. I also hunt out tutorials as well as write some of my own tutorials for you as well, just to give you a little bit of inspiration on how to use fibre and wool within your crafting. I also talk about fashion as well, which, you know, knowing my history you'll understand is quite a big passion of mine. So yeah, Crafts of Texture has become quite a big part of what Sara's Texture Crafts is. On a Thursday I am back to production again. I'm either dyeing, carding or producing product again for the website. And then Friday is just preparing, usually either for a sort of mini shop update or catching up again with admin from throughout the week, that kind of thing. So it sounds fairly simple, but obviously, you know, once customers start calling and things, and you get bits and pieces through the post that need to be dealt with here and there, then, you know, sometimes the best laid plans go out the window. But, you know, that is life and you just have to learn to deal with it. So I would say that a big part of behind the scenes is trying to be as organised as possible. You know, and that's the only way it can work, really. So that, I would say, is probably my day-to-day. So my biggest inspirations are probably going out and seeing the animals, being able to talk to the farmers firsthand and understanding how the fibres are grown. Sheep are wonderful animals, and you know they never cease to inspire me when I go out to visit the farms, and it's such an interesting business to see and understand how different breeds have different fibres, and what you can do to kind of get the best from your fibre and so on. It's very inspirational. I would say second to that, my inspiration for colourways and things like that is probably again going back to nature, but in a different sense. I try to use colours and inspirations from the world around me, really. I live in the southwest of England, in Devon, and it's a beautiful part of the country. The landscape is always changing, changing with the seasons, changing in how the land is worked by farmers around me, and it's you get so many hits of colours in different ways and different textures across the landscapes, that's probably my biggest inspiration. And you will see that quite a lot of my colourway names are to do with nature and things that I have inspired me throughout the day. I would say my other inspiration is probably fashion as well. I mean, I can't deny my past and where it came from, and fashion still influences some of the colours that I put together. So I guess I tend to, even if I'm looking in nature, I try to look at colours and try to see colours, how they might work within a garment. So I'm trying to prepare and put colourways together that I would feel could work as fashion items, whether it's an accessory you're making or whether it's a sweater you're making or so on. The colours need to work, they need to be balanced, they need to speak, they need to encapsulate that finished product and the idea that wool is a natural product. That's kind of what I want to get across, and I hope that that's what I do. There's nothing more exciting to me than getting to a show and meeting people, either for the first time or those familiar faces. It is fantastic to meet those customers and to talk about projects and what's inspiring them at the moment, and you know, sometimes that informs me and informs the way I look at things as well. So that's something else that I do love to do. So you know, come and either check me out on Ravelry, come and see me at a show. All of those details are on the main website, sarastexturecrafts.com, and ultimately come and check out Sara's Texture Crafts. Come and feed your addiction on the fibre and lovely yarn that I have for you. If you need any help at all, if you are stuck for ideas, or you just need help with differences between certain breeds and that kind of thing, and what fibres might work for you in your project, then please, please, please give me a call. I am really happy to help each and every one of you. Okay, so please check out the website sarastexturecrafts.com, and I shall see you over there.